Expedition 33 spoils players with tons of optional content and side zones, but if you never step off that main path, you'll miss some incredible moments right in front of your nose. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and here are 10 of the best side zones you can explore in Expedition 33. Guys, it should be obvious, but this video is going to dive into some location spoilers, so if you don't want to know what's coming in your adventure, check out the video much later. Once you leave Lumiere and complete these spring meadows, the continent begins to open up to you. Early on, you'll most likely be overwhelmed by the sheer scope and magnitude of the game's main story, but there's a small side zone that's just around the corner worth checking out. I'm of course talking about Abbest Cave, and if you've already defeated the enemy inside, you'll know why I've included it on this list. Inside is the Chromatic Abbest, an elite version of one of the most trivial enemies in the game. Early on, this foe is going to greatly outlevel you, but that's not actually that big of an issue. If you're patient, take the time to learn the enemy's moveset, and can deal enough damage not to prolong the fight for too long, you can actually defeat the Chromatic Abbest and secure a huge early game XP boost. You can also claim the first offensive picto, which is an interesting early game option if you're looking to sneak a little more DPS out of your team. One of my absolute favorite optional zones in Expedition 33, Yellow Harvest, is a surprisingly beautiful location that somehow manages to be both serene and deadly at the same time. Throughout the zone are a number of enemies, but for the most part you'll fight a combination of Galts and Jars. If you try and tackle this zone as you're exploring the first part of the continent, then it might present a real challenge, but it's genuinely worth it, as Yellow Harvest features 2 bosses, a vendor, 4 different weapons, 4 different pictos, and some cosmetics. It's a truly stacked zone, and you're not going to find many like it throughout the game. Some notable pickups in this zone include the auto death picto that kills the equipped hero at the start of the battle. I know it sounds strange, but it's actually powerful with the right combination of supporting pictos. Plenum is a powerful Mael weapon that feeds into her defensive capabilities, and the Chromatic Felon is a strange trio of enemies that, up until this point, you've never seen and are completely bizarre to experience the first time around. One of my favorite things about Expedition 33 is how much attention to detail and uniqueness the team squeezes into each of the side zones. Falling Leaves is accessible after you unlock Esquia's ability to swim, and while not a massive zone, it's filled with powerful glaze enemies, a strange NPC, and a boss fight. As someone that grew up in New England, I have a natural love for the fall season, and that's the theme of this entire zone. Orange and crimson leaves fill every inch of the screen, and while enemies abound, it's still a relatively peaceful location. As you explore, you'll meet Lady Sap, a strange NPC that's connected to the area's objective. Figure out how to interact with her, and you'll eventually have access to the Scavenger, a very cool boss that rewards you with the Scaverim weapon for Lune, one of the more interesting weapons at her disposal that allows her to generate and take advantage of dark stains. Falling Leaves also features the powerful Beneficial Contamination picto, which is fantastic for characters that need to build up a lot of AP and apply any form of a status effect. Located in the northernmost part of the continent is a small optional location called Sinister Cave. Now, I, for one, am an absolute chicken and really struggled to explore this location, but I promise there's nothing that sinister lurking inside, even though the aesthetic would have you believe otherwise. Instead, what you'll find is an incredibly dark zone, lots of twists and turns, and 3, yes, count them, 3 weapons that can be picked up. Elarim is an earth-based Lune weapon that synergizes with that side of her skill tree. Chalium is a light-based Mael weapon that has some fun interplay between shields, parrying, and counterattacking, and Corduron is a dark-based Ciel weapon that creates a new dynamic around the curse mechanic. If you watched our Wish I Knew Sooner tips and tricks video, then you know that one of the best things you can do in Expedition 33 is build relationships with your companions back at camp. Raising your relationship level with Minoko in particular will eventually unlock a side mission, one where he'll ask for your help at the Sacred River. This is a special Gestral location, one that has huge significance to their culture and is also one of the more gorgeous areas in the game. Dark, but with elements of vibrant light that almost give you the sense that you're walking through a glow-in-the-dark zone. There's really only 2 things to do here, and one is tied to that Minoko side quest I mentioned before. I won't spoil the surprise there, but I will tell you about the second thing you can do. At the back of the zone, you'll find a merchant, and like so many Gestral merchants throughout the game, you can fight this one, but unlike the other Gestrals, this merchant is no freaking joke. It took me a couple attempts to defeat it, and you'll want to make sure you're the right level to take this on, but what you unlock once you defeat the merchant is the ability to purchase from a massive selection of pictos. Some of these you'll most likely already have, but this vendor's pictos are higher level, which makes them more viable as pictos in the endgame when you can slot them and gain the buff plus the passive stat boost. For such a small zone, it can have such a huge impact on your ability to create interesting character builds. Easily one of my top 3 zones in Expedition 33, the Reacher is an endgame location only accessible once you have the ability to fly with Eskia and progress Mael's relationship to level 5. Talk to her after this and she'll ask you for your help unlocking access to the Reacher. This is without a doubt one of the most unique locations I've explored in any game. Your objective is to climb this massive half-built wooden structure and along the way fighting all manner of enemies. Occasionally, you'll ascend to different parts of the zone using hot air balloons, and I just found the entire aesthetic to be perfect for this game. It's abstract fantasy, and I truly found that fascinating. On top of that, the Reacher is also one of, if not the biggest optional zone in the game, featuring 2 different weapons, 12 pictos, and a vendor, as well as 2 boss fights. There's a lot to see and do here, and it all culminates with an epic boss battle that you may or may not anticipate. Some notable pickups in this zone include the Tyreso, an earth-based verso weapon that empowers his ability to mark enemies. Another one is Charging Counter, a picto that grants you plus 20% of a gradient bar charge whenever you counterattack. And then there's Sniper, a picto that empowers your first free aim shot per turn to deal plus 200% damage while also breaking enemies. I'm a huge fan of big optional zones that continue to challenge players even after the main story is over. One such location is Frozen Hearts, a massive tundra found in the valley past Minoko Station and only accessible once you've unlocked Eskia's flying. There's not a lot of variety in the enemies here, but there's certainly a variety in the loot that you can pick up. Not only does this zone feature a white Nevron, one of the 9 you need to help in order to complete the overarching side quest, something we get into in our full-length guide, but there's also a pretty challenging boss fight at the top of the zone, one that rewards the Snow weapon for Lune, which is fully geared around her ice-based abilities. On top of that, there's also some really powerful burn-related items, which you can take full advantage of on Mael. Things like Burn Affinity, which increases your damage by 25% on burning enemies, has wide implications across your entire expedition, and if you want to double down on Burn, there are 2 other options: Burning Break, which applies burn when you break a target, and Energizing Burn, which grants you AP whenever you apply burn. There are a lot of cool pictos in Frozen Hearts, and even some cool outfits, which I usually don't care about, but the Dansu set is easily one of the most visually appealing in the entire game. Truthfully, you might get tired of fighting the never-ending sea of hybrid ice-fire enemies, but the rewards are well worth your trouble. Low-key, one of the most interesting locations in Expedition 33 happens to be one of the most simple. The chosen path is accessible once you've unlocked flying with Eskia and can be found floating above the continent. Once you enter, you'll see a series of 5 glowing canvases, and each is home to a specific combat encounter. The trick here is that you can only take on these challenges with one of your characters, and you can only use them once in the entire zone. That means you'll need to defeat all 5 enemies with all 5 of your expedition members individually, which can be a challenge, especially if you tend to ignore your 2 reserve members. One of those enemies, the Contortionist, drops the Contorso, a lightning-based weapon for Verso, which is actually pretty interesting if you build around his ability to break. On top of that, once you clear all 5 portals, the door at the top of the stairs will open up, and you can claim the zone's final prize, the Picto Face Shield, which adds +1 shield to the character it's equipped on if there are no shields present at the start of the turn, essentially giving you a one-hit get-out-of-jail-free card every turn. High above the continent, closer to the start of your adventure, is a small floating zone called the Dark Gestral Arena. Never mind the fact that this is an unsanctioned fighting pit established by a group of rogue Gestrals, it's also a cool zone that will test your skills against some rather challenging enemies. Like some of the other arena-style encounters in the game, you can only choose one of your characters to participate, and each time you'll go up against a different set of enemies, which always features a chromatic Gestral of some kind. Defeating all of the enemies in the arena, including Golgra, who shows up later and threatens to shut down the operation, rewards you with 2 high-level versions of Gestral weapons you most likely received earlier in the game: the Trebuchet, a lightning-based Lune weapon, and the Sakurim, a physical-based Verso weapon. Completing the entire arena will also reward you with a new Gestral hairstyle for Mael, if you're into that sort of thing. Talk about a killer zone, the Flying Manor is the ultimate endgame location, featuring tons of enemies, bosses, and upgrades. It's clear this is meant to be one of, if not the very last stop in the game, as it's a massive zone that features foes from the entire adventure. If you're into the painter chroma aesthetic like I am, that's been present throughout the entire game, then you're going to love this zone as it's designed with that very idea in mind. The goal here is to defeat the 4 bosses that occupy the 4 major parts of the zone, and once you do that, you'll gain access to the final boss, which I won't spoil here. Each of those 4 bosses also drops a perfect chroma catalyst required for reaching the max level when upgrading your weapons. Needless to say, it's one of the final beats of the game, and you're rewarded for your efforts. One thing I really appreciate about this zone is how many different types of enemies they pack in, and they're all there intentionally, as defeating them will often upgrade one of your many weapons that you've collected along the way. If you're like me and didn't want to spend catalysts to upgrade weapons you may or may not end up using, this is a great opportunity to bring those closer to max level without having to spend any resources. The same could be said about pictos, many of which you can also upgrade thanks to the enemies in this zone. In my opinion, it's one of the coolest areas in the game and an awesome way to wrap up your time with Expedition 33. So there you have it, 10 optional zones that I think are worth checking out in Expedition 33. Let me know what your favorite zone is, mentioned or otherwise, in the comments below. And as always, if you appreciate the work that goes into making these videos, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. We'll have more Expedition 33 in your feed, so keep it right here and don't miss a thing. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching and play on.